Hi, my name is Amber. Welcome back to my channel, Books and Beaches. So this is a well overdue video. Sorry, I couldn't figure out what was making noise there for a second. But this is my September wrap up. So it has been a minute since I could sit down and film, and I have no other better excuse than I just didn't make it a priority. So there is that, but I was able to do pretty good amount of reading in September, especially for being the first month back at school. So I do have my computer here in front of me though, because, and I don't know if this happens to anyone else, but I read a lot of thrillers in the month of September, and two actually even by the same author. And so although I remember enjoying all of these, it's one of those I have to go back and go, wait, which one is which? And so, yeah, it definitely was a good reading month, but, figured out what the noise was. It was a good reading month, but they're all kind of blending together. And I want to make sure I give you accurate descriptions of each of these books. So I'm just going to start off. I'm going to go in the order that I read them, and we'll go from there. So the first of which was a book that I believe I had off of NetGalley. And of course, I didn't get to it before it came out, but this was If You Tell a Lie, and this was by Lucinda Berry. Now, I remember first catching eyes on this one because this was a book set at a summer camp. And if you've been around here for a while, you'll know that typically thrillers that are set at summer camps are a bit of a buzzword for me. And I've liked Lucinda Berry in the past. She feels very like Frida McFadden-ish to me. And so I was like, okay, I know I need to take a look at this one. But so we have 4 friends who were at summer camp together, and like I said, I'm making sure I get all these details right for you. But they basically have something happen where they set up a counselor at camp in this like really bad situation. And now if I'm remembering correctly, because like I said, they're all blending together, but we're kind of getting both timelines. And so you get the timeline, it's like 20 years later, and they are trying, oh, that's right, they each got a note on, bringing them back together because they really haven't talked since this time. And so we are getting like their current timeline, trying to figure out what everything is going on, and the flashbacks to what actually happened that summer at camp. And yeah, why are they all of a sudden having to get back together now? So it was a good read, but it by no means was a favorite of the month. I believe I gave this one like a 3.5 stars. So it isn't a favorite of Lucinda Berry's of mine, but I didn't think it was a bad read either. So there's that one. But moving on from there, I attempted to pick up a book for what was my September book club. And our book club theme for September was Spicy September, which, knowing me as a reader, I always have to think about, this may or may not be for me. And this was this the first book I actually DNF'd all year? I mean, I don't DNF or do not finish books very often. But maybe I should more often, I guess, is what I'm thinking, because, if you're really just not enjoying something, why push through to try to read it? Although sometimes for book club I will, just to see, what my opinion is. But in this one, it could be a little bit of a fault of my own, but it would be helpful if I told you what the book was. And this was Under Your Scars, and this is by Ariel N. Anderson. And I didn't know a lot going into this book. I knew it was going to be like a romantic thriller. So I was like, okay, like there's going to be that thriller element there. That'll catch me. But I also knew it was going to be steamy, because why else would we have picked it for steamy September? I got 8% of the way into this book. And like I said, it could be a little bit of my own fault, because I chose to listen to it and kind of tandem read with my Kindle, because I believe, now that I look down, this one was available on Kindle Unlimited. And then I can't remember where I ended up getting the audiobook from, but I made it 8%. I felt like this was going to be a really bad, slightly crime-influenced 50 Shades of Grey. And I hated the writing. I absolutely hated it. Now, I think maybe if I would have only been reading it and not listening to it, I might have stuck it out further. But there was a scene that talked about this male character who is supposed to be like the very attractive male character sticking his fingers in the mouth of our female main character. And I don't know if it was supposed to be like sultry and, you know, hot, but I was like, oh my God, absolutely not. Like it just, and the way it was written, just, I was like, I can't do this. So, and that's coming from someone, I did read 50 Shades of Grey, you know, when it was popular. Granted, I was probably a different reader then too, so who knows how I would feel about it now, but, you know, oh, and the voice, I'm looking because it talks about this guy who is the silencer, and I think they were, you know, some type of possible serial killer, but like serial killer for good, like when women are being attacked kind of thing. But the voice they did for that person was just weird. And so I didn't give this one much of a chance, but when I got to that point, I couldn't. So there's that one. After that, I picked up a short story, and this was, I believe, a short story that might have been one of the free reads from like the Amazon Prime free reads. And this was Bad Date by Ellery Lloyd. Now, I have read a book by Ellery Lloyd before. I don't know if it's back here or not, but it was The Club. And I remember like it was like your run-of-the-mill average thriller. So I was like, oh, short story, this is great. You know, sometimes that helps, you know, boost your numbers and whatever. And this one was just kind of strange. And coming off of DNF, it just was different. So I think it was only like 52 pages, if I'm remembering right. Okay, 58. I read this one obviously on my Kindle, and it says, an online flirtation between two apparent strangers takes a deliciously wicked turn, and it's a short story. And they say it's about love, obsession, and deadly deceptions. And it was these two people, I think they had met online, and then you see them go out on these dates, and they're like oddly connected. And I want to say it was an actress pretending to not be an actress, and she didn't think the guy knew who she was. And with being a short story, it just was strange. I don't know. That's the only way I can put it. And so I remember rating this. I rated this one a 2 because I just didn't get it. Like nothing about it was, you know, mysterious to me. And I don't know. I mean, I can understand where the deception comes in, but yeah, it wasn't anything, to use a phrase, like to write home about. So there's that one. All right, after that, I did pick up a book that I have been anticipating for a really long time. I've anticipated it since I probably bought it and finally read it, because this was last year's release for this author, and that was What Have You Done by Sherry LaPena, I believe. I think I'm finally saying that right. And so this was last year's release. I also have this year's release on this list. But I have typically loved what she puts out. And so I knew I needed to read her most current release for book club that I have here in October. But I was like, well, I should probably read last year's first. So that's why I picked this one up. And this one featured, we have like this small town, I guess it was set in Vermont. I never really get stuck on sometimes the settings of things. But a farmer comes to find this woman, and actually she was a teenager. I want to say she might have only been like 17. Dead in his farm field one morning. And so they are trying to figure out, you know, who killed her. And, you know, it says someone in Fairhill did this. Everyone wants answers. And one innocent question could be deadly. So you're getting a lot of different perspectives. We even get the perspective of a ghost in here. And that perspective is a little weird because she could not remember who her killer was, but she kind of figures out she's dead. But you get some of the typical things, like we got the perspective of her boyfriend. I'm trying to think of, like I said, they're all kind of blending in a little bit together. But, oh, we got the perspective of a friend. I think the perspective of her mom. I feel like there was one more, possibly the police perspective, but I love a good, like, different perspectives book like that. And so it was interesting to me. And now, of course, trying to remember what I rated this one. I want to say it was a 3.5, 4. Because I liked where it was going. I don't think I predicted, like, all the stories are blending together. This is so bad. It was one of those, I didn't necessarily predict who the killer was. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you or anything like that. And that's what I feel like I read a Sherry LaPena book for, is just a good, you know, time in reading it. So it's not, and I don't think, I mean, there are some of hers that I've really like probably been blown away by, but this one was pretty just like standard. But it was an enjoyable read. So part of this is I am struggling, like I said, because they're all blending together, but that's my own fault, not yours. So after that, I picked up, because I must have finished that one on like September 10th. And so I really wanted to pick up a book in honor of September 11th. I just feel like it's a really good thing to do every year. The year I read / listened to The Only Plane in the Sky, that book is fantastic. If you ever have a chance and think you can handle it, it is great on audio. But this year I picked up The Red Bandana, and this was written by Tom Rinaldi. And it is such a great story to read based on September 11th, because it is so much more than just focusing on what happened that day. This takes the story, and now I want, of Wells Crowther, who was a man that was working in one of the towers, but you get kind of a picture of his entire life. And so, you know, the small town in New York that he grew up in, how he was part of a volunteer fire department, and how he had just been accepted into like the firefighter program in New York, even though he was working, I believe it was in the business field. Yeah, I'm almost positive, but so he was working one of the towers, and he is remembered as the man with a red bandana. It was a gift that he got when he was younger from his father, and you get kind of that story of that. But so many people remember him helping them get out of the tower. So even though, and this doesn't spoil anything, he doesn't make it out, you know, we come to find all of these stories of the people he helped. And so this book, you know, writes kind of how we got there and then the effect that he had afterwards. So I don't think it's spoiling. There's nothing about this book that is spoiling per se, because these are events that obviously have already happened. But where most, I think, September 11th books can tend to be sad, and this one is still, you know, sad at parts and things, you're more looking at the life of this, the entire life of this man, and the effect that he had, and the good person that he was. And I think that's what made it, you know, the most touching. So I really like that one. I feel like I've heard Sarah at Sarah's Nightstand talk about it, and a few other people, but it was one I got to pick up from my library, and it was an excellent read. After that, I finally, even though it was one I had on my Kindle, I picked up Forget Me Not by Stacey Willingham. So this is her newest release. Gosh, when did this come out? It either came out in August or it was an early release for Book of the Month, and so it was a September release. I honestly can't remember. But I knew I wanted to get to this one, and I have really, really enjoyed what Stacey Willingham has put out in the past. I want to say, is this her third or fourth book? And this one, we have a woman who, I think it was, 22 years ago, her older sister went missing, and I don't think she's ever been found. They didn't know what happened to her, and this leads her, our main character, Claire, kind of becomes estranged from her family. She moves to New York, doesn't have a lot to do with, you know, her family and her parents. Her parents end up getting separated, but she gets called back to her hometown because her mom, I think she fell and either broke her leg or had some sort of injury that her dad was like, hey, can you go help out your mom? So she ends up back in this hometown where her sister went missing, and she's like, okay, what am I going to do with my summer? Her mom doesn't actually really want her there. Her dad, you know, talked her into it. And so she's like, what am I going to do? She ends up going to the place where I think her sister, she accepted a seasonal job at like this vineyard that her sister worked at, you know, the last summer before she went missing. And there's a lot that goes down from there. Don't want to tell you too much. We do get some different perspectives. There are some journal entries that take you back into the past and, you know, involve some of these characters. And this was quite the place. So, and a lot of different connections in here that I don't think I was expecting. So I really like this one. I believe I gave it a 4.5, if I'm remembering right. All of my reviews are on Fable, which is on my phone, and I'm filming on my phone. So it was really good. I definitely would recommend, you know, anything Stacey Willingham writes, thus far at least. But this one, definitely, there was some atmospheric stuff in there, like one night that it's raining and the lights go out, all kinds of things. So really enjoyed that one. After that, let me just double check. I want to make sure I'm doing these in order. Okay, I needed something a little bit different because I realized I was in probably a little bit too many thriller-ish things. And so there was a book that has been sitting on my, to read shelf for a really long time. And I knew I also had the audiobook, and one of the audiobook narrators was Julia Wayland. Once again, if you've been here around here for a while, you know she's one of my favorite audiobook narrators, and that is Taylor Jenkins Reid's Carrie Soto is Back. Now, I went into this one, I think, a little skeptically, and I want to say by finishing this one, I have read Taylor Jenkins Reid to zero. I'm almost positive. I've even read like some of the shorter stories and more of the contemporary stuff that she wrote earlier in her career, but I hadn't read this one. And I will admit I was a little bit scared because this book is heavily based on tennis. I mean, that is the whole premise. So we have this girl named Carrie Soto who was a big time tennis star in like the 70s/80s. And we are in the 90s now, and there's a young girl that has tied her record. And she thinks even in her 40s, she can't let that happen. And so we go along with her on this journey of trying to get back into it. And as I near my 40th birthday, I can't even imagine trying to be, back in the sport that I used to do. Now, granted, I didn't compete in that sport in my 20s, but I can only imagine. And so we go through, all of the trials and tribulations, I guess, of what it takes to kind of get back on the top of your game and try to compete with people, maybe even half your age, to defend your title. And so I liked this one, especially listening to it on audio, because one, Julia Wayland is only one of the narrators in this. She's actually not even the main narrator, but you get different types of narration. So we're getting our main character, Carrie. We're getting, some of the TV and radio interviews and shows that were happening. And so you're getting all these different voices and these different perspectives. And so that made me stay engaged with it. I think had I read it, I don't know if I would have taken as much from it. Because it is so heavily like tennis related. And I've never played tennis. I like pickleball, but I'm not even super serious about that. And so I think listening to it definitely helped me get through the story. But that actually, like, in the end, really liking it. I think I'm almost positive I gave this one a 4. But I like Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing. That always helps. And, I look forward to, what more we get. Now, I did read, it's sitting up here, I did read Atmosphere this year, and I enjoyed that one too. There were a few things that fell short for that one. I want to say Evelyn Hugo is probably going to be my top TJR, I guess, but this one was good. And then last, but certainly not least, for the second time this month, I picked up a Sherry LaPena book, and this is She Didn't See It Coming. And this is for one of my other book clubs that we're actually meeting next week to talk about this book. But I really liked this one. And this one takes you for a bit of a wild ride. And so we have, I'm trying to think of what her name was. I think it's Bryden. And I thought that was a little bit of a weird name for a female main character. But she fails to pick up her daughter from daycare. And so that daycare calls the dad and was like, hey, your wife hasn't picked up, your daughter from daycare. Like, do you know if she's coming? And he was like, well, she would always pick her up from daycare. Like, I don't know what the big deal is. And so, he rushes to pick up his daughter. And is it when? Oh yeah. So when he arrives home, they find his wife's car in the garage, and they find her keys in the apartment. Her laptop is open, but she's not there. This is another book that is told from multiple perspectives. So we get the husband's perspective, we get her sister's perspective, we get one of the police officers / detective's perspective, and there might have been one more, but now I can't remember. And so we're basically trying to figure out, first of all, where this woman went and what happened and how it happened. I don't want to say too much more. I always think you should go into thrillers, with less details than more. But this had me believing that a lot of the things any of the characters could have done. So it was one that as I got through it, I was like, oh, it was definitely this person. Or, oh, it was definitely this person. And I'm pretty sure I was wrong. So I can't wait to talk about this one at our book club next week. But like I said, Sherry LaPena can be a little bit hit or miss for me. Never a miss in the fact that I didn't enjoy it at all, but this one, 5 stars for sure, where like the other one I read this month was only like 3.5. So those are all the books I picked up in the month of September. I have been actually reading quite a lot already in the month of October, but yes, I am already behind. I mean, it is already the 10th. So I have more things planned for the month of October here. Hopefully I will, just sit down and get those filmed and get them done for you. But let me know what some of your favorites from the month of September were. Are there any books I always say that I should add to my list? Let me know in the comments below. If you are not feeling, super chatty, I will have you leave. Maybe because it's different, let's leave maybe like something tennis related in the comments, just because that was for sure the most different book that I read this month. Yeah, so leave that emoji down there if you are so inclined. But as always, if you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.